Welcome back to the Dadrepreneurs Podcast, recorded in the Texas Hill Country. This is episode 6, and John and I are talking about failure on this one. When we first started talking about it, I actually had a hard time with the word failure, because in my head, failure sounds like this big catastrophic thing. The business shuts down, you lose everything, the wheels fully come off. But the more we got into it, the more we realized that's not really how failure shows up most of the time. Most of the time, it's smaller than that. It's the idea that didn't work, the person you hired that wasn't the right fit, the opportunity that looked good until you actually got into it, the conversation you keep avoiding because you already know what it's probably going to cost you. And then you add kids into the mix and it even gets weirder. Because now you're not just thinking about your own failures. You're thinking about what your kids are watching, what they're learning, and what scares them, what scares you for them, and whether you're actually showing them how to get back up when something doesn't go the way that they don't. So that's where this conversation goes. Business, fatherhood, fear, worry lists, bad news, fire ladders, and trying to become the kind of dad who can take a swing, miss, learn something, and step back into the box. Here's episode 6, The Fear of Failure. And as always, thank y'all for being here.
All right, we're back. Episode 6. We just got done doing 5 with the wives. How you feeling after that, man? You sweating a little?
Yeah, I don't know if it is the heat outside or the
getting real.
The heat in the house.
Or the heat. That was on the patio.
The
heat in the last episode.
Yeah.
That was a good one, man. I actually feel like there's some unfinished business there. I feel like we're going to have our wives on again.
I feel like they have to come on every quarter.
Yeah.
Quarterly.
The juices got flown towards the back half of that.
Totally.
I feel like for the wives too.
Well, yeah. Whenever
and they started actually getting into it.
The kids stopped coming into the frame.
Hitting the mic and everything.
It was also their first time. So they just had to figure out. And then it just kind of turned into a conversation, which was really nice.
Yeah. The kids disappeared for 35 minutes. I think I saw everyone, by the way, like at some point during that silence, look over at the house and go like, and kind of like, should we, and then we just got to get going. Yeah. I was like, but I know with my kids, I'll eventually hear a scream.
Yeah, same.
And
same.
Because we're in a house of other parents with small kids, you know if you have anything that dangerous or not.
No, there's nothing.
If I'm in a house with people that don't have small kids, that's when I'm more nervous because you don't know what they're unaware of that my child may destroy, fall off of, light on fire.
Exactly right.
Pee on.
Exactly right.
Well, dude, today we're going to talk about failure. And maybe not catastrophic failure. And before we hit record, you were saying like, I don't know if I've really had much failure because I haven't had a lot of at-bats. I've never had a catastrophic failure.
Yeah, same.
But I have had.
That's how I think of what a failure is, maybe.
Maybe because you are an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Everyone else thinks about it, all the lost at-bats.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm thinking of it from the perspective of trying, it doesn't work.
Okay.
And needing to get back up
of those,
and try
dude.
again.
I got a laundry list of those.
And the reason why I think it's so important for us to talk about in the context of this podcast is because, actually, you said at bat, so let's use a baseball analogy. Like, what's a good batting average for a pro baseball player? Dude, it's like in the 300s.
Exactly.
If someone is batting 500, everyone's just waiting to see when it's going to drop, right? Because people don't bat 500. Pro baseball players, right? It's like if you get a hit 1/3 of the time, you're considered like elite.
Yeah.
And I think that's very analogous to, I don't know what that looks like in the entrepreneurial world or the parenting world, but
it's probably similar.
A successful batting average is low.
Yeah.
So given that in the dad world and the entrepreneurial world, we're striking out a lot when we're going up to the plate, but we keep on going, trying to get to that base hit, that double, that triple, that home run. Well, in the context of being a dadrepreneur, where do you see those failed at bats showing up for you the most? Actually, no. I want to spin this question a different way. What are the types of strikeouts that bum you out the most? Where you actually have a moment? Because I do have some of these. We have a moment where you're like, man, maybe I can't do this.
Well, high level, I think my view of what a strikeout is like catastrophic failure until this conversation. And so I think in that regard, I feel like I'm batting 1,000 because I haven't had any catastrophic failures. But in the lens that you were talking about, I think it's much, much different. I think business is just nothing but failures with a couple wins on top, and the wins hopefully outweigh the bad. Failures, in my mind, two things come to mind, and failures that have happened to me at least over the last 3 or 4 years of running this business myself. Number one is people. I find people that's
a big one, man.
It's really hard. It's really, really hard. And especially in a time where, I mean, for brands, costs are going up. I mean, not just for brands, for life, for cost of living, everything is going up and everything is expensive. And so people are expensive. Expenses are expensive. Like everything is going up in a business. The people piece is the one nut that I haven't figured out, at least for LaMatera, quite yet, of what that strategy is. And we've had tons of people. We've had contractors, we've had hires, part-time, full-time, all the, in between. I just don't know that. To me, that is like, that's where the real like failures have come. And it's just a hard nut to crack, honestly.
It's funny. I was kind of thinking like, what's my answer to this as you were talking? And the people is definitely, in terms of one that like can bum me out sometimes.
Exactly.
Well, okay. So here's what's interesting. In this season, the people failures or the missed swings, that's really bumming out my business partner who runs the operations of Free to Grow CFO.
Yeah.
Hey guys, we got some visitors. You can sit right here.
So where's the camera?
It's right there. This is my daughter, Emma, and my son, Noah. Come sit down. I'm less bummed, or when I talk about swing and miss, and I'm like, man, am I going to recover from this? I'm not as concerned about the people part in this season because I've failed at that in other businesses before and learned that I will live to fight another day. All right. I don't know how you're going to edit that, but we're cutting back to the kids came in, but we're going to continue on that thread. The people failures used to bum me out a ton.
Yeah.
When I was at Guardian Bikes. They don't anymore because we made so many mistakes there. We failed so many times. And I started to develop my principles around what makes a good hire. I'm not going to say good hire, a good people decision. Yeah. Sometimes a good people decision is moving people within the organization. It's not always a hire. But I think that leads me to think about like when it comes to taking a swing and missing, what keeps me going is having some mental framework around knowing that swinging and missing is just a part of the process.
The game.
Right? It's the lack of that when people usually quit. And I got to be honest, the more and more I build, I think there's a very similar fear that stops people from having more kids or having kids in the first place. I think that fear is actually very similar to the fear that stops people from starting a business. Yeah. When they get that sense, it's usually the fear of failure. And that's really, have there ever been moments like that you can recall where you're like, dude, I don't know if this is going to work out?
No, dude, not really. I'm like insufferably optimistic. I am cautious for sure, but I don't know what it is. There's like a thing in my mind that there is nothing that we do like that is just not going to work out from like a high level up and to the right. Like whether that's whatever it is, money, happiness, good vibes, whatever, everything to me is just positive and going up. I think there are times certainly where I have to stand there and be like, is that the right move? Or was that the right move? No. And I'm really good about just making changes quickly, sometimes to a fault. Like especially with my business, because I run my business super lean, contract heavy. We run and gun and go, pretty quickly. And so I have to actively think and make sure I'm giving somebody enough time to do the job that I bring them on for, especially if it's a contractor or something like that. And that's hard for me because I'm like, go, 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 go. If something's not working, change immediately. Go, 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 go,
Heartless,
go. Exactly.
Heartless capitalists.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But it's more just like, this isn't working out. And most of the time, I trust my gut, and it's likely the right move.
For sure.
I run quickly and I make those decisions quickly, and some of them are made maybe too quickly, but I mean, for the most part, it's still going, up and to the right.
That's interesting, man. I have certainly a level of optimism. I have to. Every entrepreneur has to, because there is no such thing as starting and building a business where it's this perfect action, positive response that reinforces more action, positive response. It's more like action, negative response, or neutral response, action, negative, neutral, action. And then you're like, dude, this is taking a long time and I'm getting bored. Should I start a different business?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, bam, positive outcome. And so, but like I've always had a high level of anxiety. Like when I was a kid, this is going to sound funny. This is a true story. When I was like 7 years old, I asked my mom, I was like, hey mom, I'm going to die, right? Because everybody dies. Like I'm really scared about dying. And I'll never forget this for the rest of my life. I just remember vividly. She like grabs my face and she's like, honey, you're so young. You just don't have to ever worry about dying. You still have to like go to college and meet a girl and get married and have kids. And she's like, you just don't have to worry about dying. But that's like the kind of, I'm a freak. I've always had that anxiety, and it was more debilitating when I was younger. As I've gotten, for whatever reason, being an entrepreneur and doing stuff that scared the hell out of me, it hasn't removed anxiety from my life, but it's no longer debilitating. I know I could take action and overcome it, but I'm still very aware of what could kill every single one of my businesses. I'm very aware of what could kill Free to Grow. I'm very aware of what could kill our real estate business. I'm actually very aware of what could kill my children. I know that sounds crazy, but like I've recently, as they've been getting older, this is a true story. I live in a 2-story house. I grew up in a 2-story house, and this again shows how my brain is wired. When I was a kid, for a season, my bedroom was upstairs, and I was like, if there's ever a fire, how am I going to get out of here? And there's this one spot where you could climb out a window and be on the roof. And I always knew when I was a kid that's my parents never told me that. I knew that. In my house now, I realized this recently. I was like, dude, there's no way out. And you know what I started doing? I went to Amazon and I
got fire ladders.
I know I didn't buy it yet, but it's on my to-do list to buy fire ladders that you can throw down the side of your house. I didn't used to think about that with my kids when they were like babies, because we probably weren't sleeping enough or just surviving. But now I'm really starting to think about what could take my kids out. And I'm saying that because it's important to have a healthy amount of fear.
Totally.
As a dad and as an entrepreneur. But there's a fine line. It's not
smart to be naive. I'm not saying that like my optimism is like just blind.
No, but there's also a fine line where too much fear basically becomes paralyzing.
And honestly, that too much fear is the piece. A lot of these folks that I talk to that are still working their, 9-to-5 job or whatever it is, they have this idea for, a business or a brand or something, and they want to take the leap. That fear is what stops them.
No, 100%.
It is that I found that is how I am insanely different than everybody else. I talk to them.
Fear.
It's not the lack of fear. It's the
But not
lack
letting
of
it get to
worry.
you?
Yeah, it's not. It's the because I do fear that I fear that it something will fail or go down or all that kind of stuff, and that just allows me to think through the ways to make sure that doesn't happen. But maybe it's my conviction, my lack of worry, maybe that once I get to the other side of that hard decision being made, like I know everything is going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, there's just no question that everything is going to be fine. But that is the thing that I see. I've had many conversations with folks who come to me because I'm that guy who stepped out of that corporate lane and went on my own little side path. And
that's funny you say that. I have a text message right now from a friend who I should be talking to tomorrow because he's like, hey, dude, I'm thinking about starting my own thing and I've been watching you building Free to Grow. And I'm like, I want to get in touch with you and talk to you about what my thinking is. And then I have another buddy who he's actually been asked me to go to breakfast with him for the last few months because was trying to start his own thing. He just did. And I actually realized in this season, and I don't think of this way, like, dude, I got 3 podcasts. I do a lot of content. In my little world, people know who I am, but I don't think about people watching my journey. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm just a nerd. I just like having podcasts. I like creating content. I like being helpful. I genuinely like it. And I've had many people come to me and be like, dude, I'm going to start my thing because I've been watching what you're doing. And I realize how important it is. Whenever someone reaches out to me, and it hasn't been a bunch, 7 times, 6, 7 times. Whenever someone reaches out to me and is like, hey, can I pick your brain? I always take that call.
100%.
Because and you know what's my number one thing I tell them? It's not as scary as you think.
Exactly.
Literally.
Yeah.
And my first question to them is like, what are you scared about? And my second question, if they're married, is what's your wife scared about? Because like we just talked about in the episode before this, like that's you can't go out on your own into dadrepreneurialism without your wife being supportive.
I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. The thing that I will say that does drive me a little bit crazy is when some of these brands or some of these like founders or potential entrepreneurs or anything do come and ask for advice or whatever, which like I've got a little bit of good advice and a lot of bad advice to give. But what I do have issues with is when people don't take any kind of advice and act on.
Well, so like they're just window shopping,
basically,
tire kicking, but they keep talking about it and keep obsessing over it.
And I meet with them every quarter.
Time to just take an action. Yeah,
exactly. I meet with some folks regularly, and just like that, things don't change from where they were, 1 year ago, and where they said they want to be 1 year from now, and they're just not.
Well, okay, it's funny you mentioned that because I don't remember where I read this, some book or something I've read. But the guy's talking about like tapping into mentors. Yeah. And one of the most important things that this guy's advice was with tapping into a mentor is like, look, they're investing time into you, and make sure that you take some of their advice. Yeah. And the reason is if you don't, eventually they don't want to talk to you anymore.
Exactly right.
And they're not actually looking for you to do everything their way. They're looking for you to take action and then actually come back and be like, dude, so I did it this way.
Exactly right.
Here's what happened. And I need like a new round of advice.
Yeah. And
they want to see results from being a mentor.
Exactly right. Because it is everything is a like push and pull. It's a give and take. The life is just one big give and take. And it kind of goes back to, I have a battery. I look at it like I have a battery. I have my business battery and I have my social battery. And what I want is I want anybody who I come in contact with to charge those batteries up. And I hope whoever I come in contact with, I'm able to charge their batteries.
For sure.
You know what I mean? But whenever some of these folks are just drags on my battery, and then I just get burnt out, that's not helpful. So I just don't, I'll exit stage right, or I just won't even, I'll read the room and won't even like get involved. And so that's my biggest thing with some of these like folks who are, asking for help or, founders or whatever, is if you're going to ask for, regular advice or anything like that, and there's no perfect path. So don't think that I'm saying you should take everything I say and do it. Definitely not. Yeah. That is not what I'm saying. But don't say that you want to be somewhere and not do anything to get there.
Totally. Totally. One thing that has been helpful for me with fear is that I learned this, I think it's from Michael Hyatt. He talks a lot about mindset, talks about things like limited beliefs. And he has this acronym for fear, which is false expectations appearing real. And one thing that I try to ask myself is like, is this fear founded in reality or is it just in my head? And it's crazy how many times it's in my head. Very few times it's in reality. And like one thing that I don't have to do this a lot, but sometimes I'll just have a day where I'm just like, I feel so this oppression on me of like, I have all these things that need to be done in the personal world and in the business world. And maybe stuff's happening to my real estate business and free to go at the same time. And my kid's not sleeping.
And there's a cash crunch and there's like this personnel problem. And
you're just like, I can't deal with this all at once. What I'll actually do is I have this notebook and I'll sit down and I'll make a worry list.
I think that I'm glad you're saying this because that was going to be my next question to you. Like, I haven't found a good way to get out of those slumps because the slumps happen for sure.
They're scary. Those are probably the most debilitating things for me. And like, I can like sit at my desk, no joke, and be like, I don't know what to do. Like, and so I make a worry list and you just literally, there's no real process. You open up a notebook and you write out every single thing that you're worried about. And every single time I do it, every single time I look at the stuff that's on the paper and half of it I can cross off because it's just in my head. And then with what's remaining in the other half, usually another half of that is like, this does not need to be done right now. Emma. And then what's remaining, I'm like, this is what I need to take action on.
Yeah.
And there is actually a lot of neuroscience behind this, believe it or not, that like when you externalize the things that are stressing you out, you can actually gain proper perspective on them because what's internalized in your brain actually doesn't know the difference between something that has to be done and something that doesn't have to be done, or a perceived threat and an actual threat. Your brain doesn't know the difference between those things, or at least the primitive part of your brain.
Yeah.
And it takes the writing it out and looking at it and reading and thinking about it, brings it to your prefrontal cortex, which is the executive, which is the executive part of your brain.
Yeah.
And that is when you can actually gain logic. It's the logical side of your brain.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that you write it down because now thinking about it, I was like, yeah, I don't really I haven't found a good way, but I find now that I'm thinking about it, I find whenever I worry the most, it mostly shows up after I go to sleep at like 8:30 and I wake up at 2.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it shows
up.
And
it's like clear. I hate those nights. And I'm like, this is not. Okay, so let me ask you this.
Productive. But what I was going to say is how I get it out of my brain and how I know and it can get back to sleep really quickly is I write it down in my notes app on my phone.
Yeah, it's
interesting.
Have you ever heard of the book Getting Things Done?
Yeah.
So I read this book when she was a baby. There's actually a picture on my phone of her as a baby sitting on my lap while I'm reading this book. And I should frame it and put it in my office. But the first step, or one of the first steps in David Allen's Getting Things Done process, is capture. And that's what you're doing. He's like, you have to capture everything. That you have to separate. Unfortunately, most of us think that we have to capture and process, like, or execute on at the same time. His framework is like, no, there's a separate process for deciding if and when you should do or act on what you have captured. But you can't even decide until you have captured and got it all off your brain. And so I think that's And it's the same neuroscience principle. He's not a neuroscientist. He just stumbled upon this, but later found that there's a lot of neuroscience that backs it up. What I was going to ask you next is like, we've been talking a lot about what we worry about with our businesses. What do you worry about failing at with your kids?
That's a good question.
Or what are you worried about your kids failing at? Because that's a new one for me of like being worried about that. None of my kids are in grade school.
Yeah, I don't think I'm worried about my kids failing at something quite yet because I think we're still pretty young. I think my biggest worry that's starting to creep up because my oldest is going into 4K at the elementary school. Yeah, so she's like going into
public school.
The school. And the first thing that I think about is I just want to make sure she's okay socially. And that's what I really worry about is just like, making sure she like isn't ostracized in some way. And again, it may come back to it may come back to what's in my brain versus what reality is. But I think about that often.
That stresses me out hardcore. And specifically with my daughter, my one daughter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because all my kids are different. I worry about it with my daughter because she's delicate. My oldest son, who's the middle, he's delicate. My youngest, he does not care what anyone thinks about him. And I'm totally not worried about that for him. I'm more worried about him accidentally choking someone out and thinking that they're playing. But one thing I was thinking about as you're saying that is like, when my daughter first went to kindergarten, I had this whole new list of things I had to think about that I didn't have to think about when she was in preschool. This is kind of funny, but I'm just going to say it because this is the podcast to say it. The summer before kindergarten, my wife didn't even realize this. Like she could already go to the bath. She is 5, so she's obviously potty trained. But we're still wiping her butt like 50% of the time.
Yeah.
And I go tell my wife, I was like, Andrew, she has to be able to wipe her butt 100% of the time. She's got to go number 2 at school. She ain't. The preschool teachers will help with that. Kindergarten teacher ain't helping with that. So I literally had to spend the summer teaching her all the things that could go wrong with wiping her butt. But things as simple like that. And like, I actually was really worried about that. As funny as it sounds, because like, I just had this idea in my head of my daughter being like having to use the bathroom and being freaked out about that, you know? But anyways, going back to what you were saying about fear of like your kids, your daughter's social acceptance. I want to get your take on this because my wife has a huge fear of that for our daughter.
Yeah.
I have a huge fear of that for her.
Yeah.
But I have a specific take on it, which is very entrepreneur. I'm literally like, dude, F other people.
Yeah.
Like, I want her to be different. And there's some truth to that, but there's also like truth to the fact that like, you know, when you're going to school, like kids want to fit into some degree. And, but I also don't want my kids to be afraid to not fit in. Cause I've always been kind of a weirdo, or I've definitely been different than the average run of the mill person my whole life, which plays into my entrepreneurial journey. But how do you think I know you guys are just sending her off to grade school in a few months, but like, you have any thoughts on what your philosophy is going to be to teach her if she runs into any issues there?
Yeah. I mean, it's a similar foundation of what you're saying. I mean, we already see her being pretty different in that whenever she's on a playground or something like that, she's just always like monitoring the situation.
Yeah. But my daughter, same thing.
Yeah.
Took her a while to get into the mix.
Yeah.
It really did.
So she like monitors the situation and honestly she may turn into a CEO one day because she has that kind of mentality. But I don't have a, well thought out perspective on it. I think that's just one of my worries, especially whenever I see her in the playground, like, doing her own little thing and over on the side and all these other animals are doing whatever they're doing. I think that's just one thing that comes to mind. But honestly, it's just one of those things that it's likely just in my mind I see that moment and that's how I read that moment. But then 3 minutes later, she's in the mix playing with, just all in that. So,
well, I'll tell you a story that, I mean, again, not that you're necessarily dealing with it yet, but when Emma first went to kindergarten 2 years ago, she was very timid and she was having a hard time confidently, getting into like some friend groups, and her teacher called that out to us in our kind of first conference, but she's like, it's normal. Like these kids are trying to figure it out, and she has become a lot more confident, like to the point where she's a little bit too confident and defiant now. But she still has her moments of like, I would say if on the spectrum of like outgoing to like really, really like introverted, she's a little bit more on the introverted side still. But I personally am just trying to teach her to be okay with failing. Honestly, be okay with failing at everything.
Yeah.
Trying the monkey bars, trying the math problem, trying to make friends, trying to play soccer, trying to play whatever. Just be okay with failing, because I think the moment that there's this light bulb that went off for me at some point, I don't know exactly when, but I know it's gone off because of who I am today. But the moment that you're able to unlock in any human that they can fail, learn something, get up and try it again, but try it again a little bit better than the last time before. The moment you unlock that for a person, it literally unlocks their whole life.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I like now that we're kind of like in the conversation talking about it, I'm looking back and what are different things that I've done over the last few years that would be a failure. And one that comes to mind is I started a boutique 3PL company last year. And it was mostly off of whenever the like tariffs and craziness
I
was
didn't
happening.
realize that you just started that last year. When we met and you were talking about
January.
that, I thought that like you had always done that.
No.
So you were 6 months in when I...
Yeah, exactly. And it was an opportunistic type thing where all these folks, especially there was a couple brands in Canada that were having troubles and needed like a US spoke to get shipments out and stuff. And I was like, I've got a warehouse, I've got people, and I'm centrally located. This would be perfect. So, and that's my background is in logistics and all that. And so it is easy. Dude, I got into that business. I was like, I do not like this business. This is a terrible business to be in. This is a no margin business. Clients are crazy because they're already like pent up because they're having this issue in general.
And you're too connected to the customer experience.
Exactly.
Too.
Yeah. And so I would say that was a failure, but as I look at it, it's not quite a failure. I don't look at it as a failure because I just look at it like it's a ping pong ball. So any of these ideas, I hit it and it goes one way, but then I've just pivoted the whole idea. And just
because you use it as a learning experience. And like,
exactly.
This is a pretty common cliche in business, but or probably maybe I've heard this multiple places. Like, it's only a failure if you don't learn anything.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to teach my kids. And that's what I try to teach my people in my businesses too. Like the people that work for me, like it's okay. Actually, that's a really hard thing. As you start scaling your team, because I'm up to 25-ish people now, I realize how I actually have to fight back actively against the human nature, the natural human tendency to avoid failure. Not in me. I'm talking about in my team. Like I have to tell my team to bring me bad news.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned this on one of our first episodes. In Poor Charlie's Almanac, he talks about how at Berkshire Hathaway, they have a rule. If you have good news and bad news, always share the bad news first because the good news can wait until tomorrow. I want to know the bad news now. And the point is like, I want to hear about the failure immediately because I want to learn from it and I want to adjust. And that, as soon as you make that your default, failing becomes an opportunity. And in some ways for me, I've got to imagine this way for you too. In some ways for me, as soon as you learn that, I'm not like trying to fail. Like I'm not like, I'm going to wake up and fail today.
Yeah.
But I actually start just trying a bunch of stuff. It almost that when you have this realization, I start speeding up
Totally.
on the actions I'm willing to take. That's usually when my wife has to like reel me back in. But I'm like, I want to see where it breaks to basically prove out my assumptions.
Yeah.
And then decide how I need to retreat and kind of reload and refire.
Yeah.
I'm kind of addicted to that, to be quite frank with you.
Yeah. And you just get more confidence as you go through it, because you're just like, you have those war stories and you're beaten down, but those things just keep you going. You know what I mean? I couldn't agree more. I'm right there with you.
I mean, we could talk about failure for another hour, but we have all of our kids here.
It's going to be a failure if we don't.
Yeah, we need to get them dinner soon here. So before we shut it down, though, final thoughts on the topic of failure as a dadrepreneur.
Yeah, I think you just gotta you gotta accept it, that it's just a part of life, in fatherhood and in business. Yeah, it's part of life.
That was when John died.
So yeah. And so, yeah, it's just part of it. And so I would say, think through it, understand, what could go wrong, but put just as much time thinking about what could go right, and just go for it. You gotta, whatever it is, just go for it, and know that there is a strong chance that you fail, and that's okay. And if you do, that's okay.
Yeah, man, I love it. I think my final thoughts are overcoming the fear of failure is the single thing that separates success from not being successful.
Yeah.
Fear is the number one-sided thing that drives regret and holds people back from taking action on where they feel called to take action. It's applicable to being a dad. It's applicable to being a husband. It's applicable to being an entrepreneur. So learn your method, your process for overcoming fear, because it will serve you in anything you decide to build. So yeah, man, I think that's a wrap. Episode 6.
That's a wrap. Thank you all for being here.